Earlier this year, I mentioned that GM was potentially producing an 8.3 liter diesel for their lineup. And one of my friends, you guys know him, Josh from Truck Stuff, he had did a video discussing a 7.1 liter Cummins. Now, I asked him about that, and he had said that he read online that a few people were saying that Ram was potentially going to be increasing the displacement for the 2025 Ram HDs. Now, really quickly, I gotta give a shout out to my favorite dealer here in Sandy, Utah, Larry H. Miller. This Rebel is available for sale. This is a really nice truck. They actually have the windows tinted, including the windshield, and they have a paint protection film all on the front end of this truck, all the way back to the door here. So nice protection, and this truck is $86,220. It's pretty much loaded up. It has every option. They also tinted the rear glass too, I could tell. It's a little bit darker. But yeah, let's get under the hood here and talk about this potentially 7.1 or 7.2 Cummins. The 6.7 Cummins got introduced back in 2006 time frame, and they basically went from the 5.9 24 valve to this 6.7 displacement. Now, one of the biggest improvements obviously was the displacement in that year, but they also went to a VGT, which is a variable geometry turbocharger as well. You can probably see it down there. Now, this truck does have the standard output Cummins. The reason why it makes sense, because it has not been confirmed yet that Ram is going to a larger displacement engine, but it only makes sense that they will, because how much power can you pull out of this engine? If you don't know, back in 2006, 2007, when they introduced this engine, it was putting out 350 horsepower. Right now, if you were looking at a high output Cummins, that engine putting out 420 horsepower. Now keep in mind, I believe back then the torque was about 650. Today, this engine is capable of putting out 1,075 pound-feet of torque. As of right now, the standard output Cummins does have the 68 RF transmission. We already know that they're going to go away from this transmission and potentially, or it's actually really confirmed now that they're going to be going away from the Eisen as well. The Eisen has more torque handling capabilities over the 68 RF, which is why this engine only has 370 horsepower and 850 pound-feet of torque. So yeah, it is limited with that transmission. But for 2025, they are planning to go to a ZF power line behind just one Cummins. So they're not going to have a standard and high output. They're just going to have one. We already know that to be confirmed. And it's very likely that the displacement will go up. And here's why. If you want to make reliable power, the only way to do that is by increasing displacement. As I said, GM has been rumored to be potentially working on an 8.3 liter diesel. And that only makes sense because they've had that 6.6 liter for far too long. So in order to get over the hump of 1,000 pound-feet of torque, it does make sense that they're going to go to a larger displacement engine. And I think that's what Ram is going to do. Now, some people are going to probably say, well, Ford did not do that. They actually have 500 horsepower and 1,200 pound-feet of torque in their current truck. And you would be right, but they're not proven. And you have to remember, depending on who wins the election next year, that's going to also affect these trucks, because I heard it said they want to add even more restrictions to diesel engines, right? I've even heard them talking about particulate filters for gas engines, which, again, where do you draw the line? And I do believe if they do have to add more emissions crap, they're going to have to up the power. And do you see right there? All that emissions crap goes on and on and on. So if they continue to restrict the exhaust system on these trucks, they're going to have to up the power. Now, I'm pretty sure we're going to see 500 horsepower plus. I can almost guarantee that. And it wouldn't shock me if Ram sets the bar even higher than Ford's 1200 to like 1500 pound-feet of torque. I can see them doing that. Now that they have the ZF Powerline transmission, that does open up more potential with the Cummins. And back in 2020, when I was traveling, I was in Indiana with our family. Somebody that lived next door to them worked for Cummins, and he told me that Stellantis, now it was FCA back then, hasn't even scratched the surface of the 6.7 liter. But even with that being said, I still think that there's more potential for them to go to a bigger displacement and then make that power reliable. And there's possibility that a larger displacement engine could even be more efficient, especially with it having the 8-speed transmission, which makes those steps closer, which should let the RPMs run a little bit lower. Now, if you were to get on the highway right now with this Cummins and 6-speed, it runs at about 2,000 RPMs, give or take. Now, these trucks, single rear wheels, have the 373. You can get the 410 on the dualies, but even with the 373, the RPMs do run a little bit higher. So I'm willing to bet you that that 8-speed ZF will probably allow them to run just a little bit lower, because that's where the GM and the Ford's 10-speed shine, because they do run lower RPMs at higher speed. So I don't know. I want to hear your guys' thoughts. After seeing Josh's video, it did get me thinking about, it makes sense for them to go to a higher displacement. Now, we haven't heard anything yet. Ram has not come out and said that they are going to be changing the displacement, so I want to make that clear. And I'm just speculating that that might happen, because with the extra power and torque that they want to make, it only makes sense for them to do it with more displacement. Alright, so it's a little cold outside, so I figured I'd jump inside the truck really quickly. Last thing I want to talk about with you guys is reliability. So Josh talks about it in his video, and really quickly I want to show you just some of the things he talked about, and then we'll jump back into it.
A couple things that I'd really like to see Cummins make improvements on is getting rid of the roller lifters, or at least going with a roller lifter that doesn't fail. In the past 2 weeks, I've had 3 of them with failed lifters. It's becoming an epidemic. They took a flat tappet solid lifter camshaft design, and it was flawless for a lot of years. And for some reason, they thought going to a roller one would be a better option. I'm not agreeing with that, especially with the amount of failures that we're seeing coming out of those lifters. Also seen a lot of rocker arm and push rod accelerated wear. This week I did another Cummins that had 6 worn out push rods. And when that push rod wears out, it takes out the rocker arm as well. On that one, there was no indication that the camshaft or the lifters had failed, but I think we caught that one at time.
So yes, I think that Ram needs to take the time and see the error in their ways. The 2018s, I believe, had the flat tappet set up, and in 2019, that's when they went to this roller lifter. Now, the last thing I want to mention here is your oil and the type of oil you should be using on the Ram trucks. If you don't know this and you own a Ram, then you probably should just go and research this. But I do know, because of the hydraulic latch adjusters and that valve train set up with this truck for 2019 and newer pickups, you cannot use 15W40 oil. And I did a lot of research on this before I bought my 2019. So when I saw that, Ram recommends a 10W30 oil. I have a GMC currently, uses 15W40 oil. And at that dealership, I've had 2 guys, I was trying to run synthetic because that's what I ran in my Ram, the 5W40. I had 2 guys at GMC tell me, do not use synthetic or the 5W40 oil. He said, just use the 15W40. It's cheaper, and he says, trust me, it's better for these engines. And so 2 guys told me that. I had a 2023 GMC and a 2024, and on different occasions, 2 different guys told me that. And I'm almost wondering if people should just stick with the 10W30. But in the wintertime, if you have like those temperatures below 0 degrees and you can't plug your truck in, or if you won't remember to plug your truck in and allow it to at least get to a good temperature, then yeah, you might have to run the 5W40. But a few guys I've talked to say do not run that 5W40 oil. And I'm almost wondering if the reason why some of these Ram trucks are having issues is because they're using that 5W40. I don't know. I'm just speculating here, but hopefully Ram sees the error in their ways and they change it. They did good by the customers by getting off of the CP4 and going back to the CP3, and they did a recall on it. You guys saw that. So they did change that. Ford is still using the CP4. I'm not sure if they've been able to work with Bosch to make it more reliable. I guess only time will tell on these 2023 plus trucks because they're still using it. But I hope you guys liked the video. I am super excited about the new Ram truck. Not much is going to be changing for the exterior of the truck. It's going to have the same cab, same bed. So that's not something that we're going to see. But I'm excited to hear and see if they're going to go to a bigger displacement Cummins. And as I said, they're going down to one Cummins and one transmission, so it's going to be a lot more easier to spec out your truck now too. You don't have to go to a 3500 to get the high output and Eisen, and so on and so forth. But be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet. Make sure your notifications are on. See you guys soon.